Hi guys, my name is Amish Tripathi and I'm the director of the Nehru Center. The Nehru Center is the cultural wing of the Indian High Commission in the UK, and we've been in existence for many decades, and we organize wonderful events at this very auditorium. You can register for our newsletter at our website nehrucenter.org.uk. You don't need to write them down, they will be displayed at the bottom of the screen. You can also come to our Facebook page, which is a verified page, the Nehru Center. You can follow updates on all our events on Twitter as well, the Nehru Center, that's also a verified account. Or you can come to our YouTube channel, again, the Nehru Center. We are nothing if not consistent. I hope you do come to our online channels and enjoy the events that we are putting up for you. Thank you so much for all your love and support. Namaste, Jai Hind.
Hi guys, my name is Amish Tripathi and I'm the director of the Nehru Center, as you would have guessed by the video that was just played just prior. And we are here today to do the international online launch of this wonderful book, Equations by Shivani Sibal. It's been launched recently, just in July, already making waves in India. And Shivani is joining us on this platform. If Shivani could be brought up on stage, please.
Hi, Amish.
Hi, Shivani. Pleasure having you on the Nehru Center platform. I will do your formal introduction in a bit. We are a Sarkari place. Everything is formal.
I'm going to sit more at attention now. Yeah.
And the person to be in conversation with Shivani is an old Nehru Center favorite. Old because she's been around at the Nehru Center for long. It's not a comment on anything else. Lady Kishwar Desai, please.
Namaste. Thank you, Amish, for the lovely introduction.
How are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
If I may just read the formal introduction, please. Shivani, first, Kishwar, with your permission, if I may read Shivani's introduction first. Shivani Sibal's debut novel, Equations, was launched in July and is already a bestseller. Set in Delhi from the 1980s to modern times, it followed the lives of the Sikand and Kumar families, who are like family, but not quite. Equations has received rave reviews in several publications, including the Hindustan Times, the Times of India, the Hindu, the New Indian Express, the Asian Age, Scroll, and Open Magazine, practically every media group you can think of. She lives in Delhi with her husband and daughter. Shivani, absolute pleasure having you on the Nehru Center platform.
Thank you so much.
And Lady Kishwar Desai, what can I say? One of my favorite people in the world and one of my favorite authors. We have launched her book, The Longest Kiss, earlier, and as you know, I absolutely love that book. Kishwar Desai is an award-winning author and playwright who writes both fiction and non-fiction. She worked in television as an anchor and producer for over 20 years before becoming a writer. She is the chairperson of the Arts and Cultural Heritage Trust that set up the world's first partition museum at Town Hall, Amritsar. Those of you who haven't seen it, please go and see it. This is part of our history, and even though traumatic, there are some traumatic truths that all of us must know and make our peace with. And I think Lady Desai has done wonderful work in putting up this museum. She has also helped to install the statue of Mahatma Gandhi outside Westminster in the UK, where we'll certainly be celebrating Mahatma Gandhi's anniversary very soon on October 2nd. Lady Desai, with your permission, if I may ask Shivani one question using the prerogative of Director Nehru Center, and then I shall leave the conversation to you. Yeah? Is that a no or
yes. Yes.
I was waiting. I was like,
I thought I'm getting the silent treatment.
Yes.
yeah, somebody asked me a question.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so Shivani, I loved your book.
Thank you.
And if I may ask something at a broader level rather than the story itself, because what you're covering is, in a sense, a story in the backdrop of social changes that have been happening in India, which
Yes.
many Westerners may not be aware of. The Sikhs, perhaps to use a term, represent the old elite. and there is a new elite that is rising. There is, of course, dissonance with that, even if it is done in a democratic, peaceful way. It has happened across various sectors in India slowly post 1991. Uh, and obviously, the Western world doesn't really interact that much with the new rising elite. It interacts more with the old elite. It is a
Yes.
complicated issue. It's been written with maybe some sadness and trauma from the old elite. It's been written with unnecessary aggression, I find, from the new elite. You've written on a very complex topic in a very light way, in a very relaxed way. Uh, First of all, what's your sense on the changes that are happening, and how did this story occur to you?
You know, when I grew up, Amish, in Delhi in the 1980s, I've written this book entirely from memory, right? Or not entirely, but the parts about the 1980s childhood. You know, we used to go out to play in the evenings in
Hmm.
the park. And, our friendships were not curated by our parents. Like today, I can tell you as a parent of young children, 50 WhatsApps I exchange, where are you going, when you coming, who's going with you, who's coming with you. And we were just told, go on the street and play and come back when the street lights come on.
Hmm.
And the children of the bungalows and the staff quarters all used to play together in the parks.
Hmm.
And childhood was their only commonality.
Hmm.
And that was the only prerequisite for friendship, right?
Hmm.
And then they would come from very different lives and go back to very different lives. But for that 1 or 2 hours, they were friends.
Hmm.
And the idea of two friends separated by class came to me there because now that doesn't happen. And this I can ramble on another story, but I do feel that power is never given; it's taken. So what you said about dissonance, and there is going to be some level of friction with
Hmm.
that. And while it's natural that things will change, new people, new ideas whose time has come, they will take over as they well should. But what worries me is that with all this change, many things which should not remain the same are nothing has changed, everything has changed, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
There is patriarchies as it was, misogynies as it was, attitude has not changed. People
Hmm.
who have taken control have changed, if that makes any sense.
Hmm. Fascinating. Okay. Very, very fascinating take. I gotta say, it takes rare skill to write on a complex topic with a light touch.
Oh,
I'm looking
sorry.
forward to your next
Yeah, I
book.
do want to say something about that too. Sorry, you did ask me about the lightness of the book, which I got lost in my own story. Which is, honestly, I'm a debut novelist, right? Now, I can impose upon X amount of the reader's time. So if I
Hmm.
told you, I've written this book, it's about, well, caste, class, misogyny, patriarchy, alcohol abuse, marital abuse, I can go on and on. I mean, everyone's going to be like, well, maybe I'll read that one a little later, right? So, I had to approach it with a slightly lighter touch because I ultimately am writing a book that I want people to read.
Hmm.
So that's where the said lightness has come from.
Wonderful. So I'm going to be looking forward to your next book as well. I must say that, and hopefully launching it again at the Nehru Center if it does happen within the next year. If not, I'm
No
sure.
pressure. Yeah.
No pressure. And to the audiences, let me leave the stage to a far better interviewer than me, Lady Kishwar Desai. All yours, Kishwarji.
Thank you so much, Amish.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amish. I could never beat you on anything. But yes, Shivani, I think one of the things which we really need to lead with is that this is really debut novel. And to choose such a difficult topic for your debut novel, yes, that is a huge challenge that you took on. Um, what made you turn to writing? Let's start with that question. Why did you want to write?
So I don't know if I wanted to write specifically because I've never written before, not even a journal or, anything. But this particular story has been in my head since 2006, which is a very long time to sit on it. You know, and I just couldn't find the words. Honestly, it was just an idea which I just, mentioned to Amesh how it came about. And then I mean, this sounds very bizarre, but I didn't have a story. I just had an idea. And about 2017, I started doing Shirshasana headstands. Okay, and this is relevant to the story. And it was like shaking a bottle. I don't know how to put it, okay? And all the ideas and the thoughts just flowed out, and I just couldn't stop myself after that. So, in an absolutely unrelated, event of the Shirshasana, out came the story. It sounds silly, but this is the truth.
But then, of course, you had to sit down and actually write it. How did you
Yes,
manage that? Because you do come up from a family of writers. There is your
I
mother.
do.
There are also many other there are publishers in your family, etc. So, didn't you find it just a little bit daunting to take on something like writing when you're surrounded by such wonderful writers yourself?
You know, the two wonderful writers specifically that I'm surrounded by, they wear their achievements very lightly. So they humored me and encouraged me. And in fact, the most apt advice I got was a very practical piece of advice. And it was from my mother, who told me, I was having trouble finding time to write the 500 words a day that everyone must write, if you know what I mean. And she said, well, why don't you write 200? And I was like, that seems really little, doesn't it? 200 words? But that's what I did. And yeah, it took a little bit longer and it got the job done. So, I think if I had thought about it, I probably wouldn't have gotten it done. But because,
Okay.
I had a very short window of time in the day to write, and I had a very short target, it slowly kind of, piled up and got done. And that was the joy of it.
Yeah, and it's a very, very Delhi novel.
It
It
is.
definitely, yes, it has the atmosphere of Delhi, which is, as you said, this is where you grew up, this is your city, this based on observations. But this particular story, this particular narrative, was it what India is going through? Is that the larger prison that you were looking at? Or was it just a story of relationships that you were putting forward, based on observation, perhaps?
So, again, going back to what I said just a little bit earlier, I wanted a story at the very basic level where everybody would enjoy reading it, if you know what I mean. There's so much competing for our attention at the moment: social media, OTT platforms, pandemic related stress, that I find I personally had reader's block a lot. So, my first aim was that a person should read the story and enjoy it. And if you don't want to take the deeper metaphors away from it, you don't have to. So yes, you're absolutely right. Sikand House is a metaphor for India, the old India, which is what both of you were referring to. So yes, at one level, it is a simple story of two boys, and at another level, you're free. I want it to be a bit like a photograph where you can pick up what you liked from it, whatever jumped out at the reader. So it's both.
Okay. And was it, and this is a question, that I guess you can't avoid. Were there any real life figures that you took into the book? Perhaps you don't want to name them, but were they there? Were
No,
they
no,
there
no.
around you?
I have a very interesting thing to read out. May I? On this
Yes.
subject?
Yes.
Huh. It's, right at the beginning of the page with the with the dedication. This is a work of fiction, and all characters and incidents described in this book are a product of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Having said that, Kishwar, having given that disclaimer, we all draw from our lives in our writing and our work, obviously, right? But I didn't want it to be based on anyone specific for two reasons. Firstly, it's kind of lazy. You just kind of, pick up stories of people and put them down with a different name. I think it's intellectually lazy. And the second is, it's really kind of very unfair and even cruel. I mean, all I can say is I won't want that done to myself, right? So I put it in the reverse, and I'm happy to say that none of my friends or family have broken up with me. Everybody still likes me. So all I can say is that, all's well that ends well. But on another note, I specifically wanted the characters, rather counterintuitively, to be generic, because anybody who picks up the book should be able to identify with the characters. They should resonate with them. And a number of people have said to me, this reminds me of so and so in my life, or so and so in their life. So it was to broaden the identification, that I kept them pretty generic, so everybody can see somebody they know. I don't know if you felt like that. Did you?
I think so. I think that also comes out in the reviews that you've got, which are absolutely glowing. For a
Thank you.
first-time novelist to get that kind of a response is because I think people did manage to relate to a lot of people in the book, and the book
Yes.
has a lot of characters. I mean, that is the other thing which I found absolutely astonishing. It's not a very large novel. It's quite a slim novel, but it has a lot of characters. And I think that is what makes it so
I'm sorry, I've lost your audio. I've lost your audio. I'm so sorry.
Can you hear me, ma'am? Can you hear?
I can hear you, Vineet. I can
Yes.
hear
Is
you,
it
but
is it possible for you to log out and log back in?
me? Yes.
No, no, not you.
Okay.
Sure, ma'am. Can you log out and log back in? Yeah, then that should solve the problem. Yes, please. If you can come log out and log back in, please. No, unfortunately, I think we
Vineet,
have.
are you able to hear me?
I can hear you clearly, but I cannot hear Lady Desai
Yeah.
actually. Her audio has got an issue.
Yeah.
Try your iPad instead of mobile phone. See if that works. Because we have. Can you hear us? Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us, Lady Desai. Yeah, you can hear us. So your microphone is somehow disconnected. I'm not sure why it is disconnected. For whatever reason, it's not connected. It's not accepting the audio. No, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. No, your audio is somehow gone. I have no clue why. The only way is to switch the device and see if that works, because this device is somehow not giving the microphone audio. So if you have your iPad handy, you can try going back on your iPad like you were when we were doing a tech check.
Yeah.
Well, is that any better?
Vineet, are you okay with this?
Is that any better? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Oh, so something went wrong with that. 1 second, just let
Device.
me adjust. Yeah, something
Yeah,
went
please,
wrong with
please, not to worry.
that. Sorry about this. It's never ever happened, which is
Not
so
to worry. These
weird.
things happen.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Now.
That's modern living, isn't
Right.
it?
We can modern living. Yes, you can say that again with all its problems with Zoom and whatnot. Anyway, are we ready to go now?
Well, I am.
Vineet, can we carry on? Hello.
Yes, please. Yes, please
Okay,
carry on.
so
Yes, please carry on.
we'll just carry on. Hi, Vineet. Can we carry on?
I think we can, yes.
He came and went. Okay. Right. So I was, yeah. So I think I was in the middle of a question when it went and you couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, viewers. We are back again. That was a technical glitch. And what I wanted to talk to Shivani about was the fact that all the characters that she has put in the book,
Right.
and there are a number of them, because the book, works at a breathtaking pace. There are so many things happening. It's a fairly slim novel, and each of the characters, as she said, is very recognizable, people that we would know. So did you actually make a cast of characters, or was this something like, they just came to you like a lot of
Organically.
happens? Yeah.
Entirely organically. I mean, I was concerned that I was packing a lot into a 200-page book. But honestly, I think that the attention span that people have today is very different. Like I said, I when I read, I want things to happen, and I like a very, beginning, middle, and end story. So I hope that came across. And the characters, every time I write, I'm in a trance-like state in my writing time. So I'm not thinking. It's literally, I'm in my mind's eye. I'm in the room with the characters. They're speaking to each other about even very minute details. And they think, they look around, they feel, and that's what comes out on paper. So all of these characters just kind of came out of one thing led to another, and they were out there.
And of course, the yoga asana that you were doing at that time probably helped.
That did help, yes.
Yes, that did help. So did you continue doing your yoga throughout while the period that you were writing this book?
This has a very sad and less glamorous story, is which I crashed into a mirror and I was in a cast for 3 weeks, and that was the end of my Shishasans. I've been banned by my family from doing them anymore because they think it's stupid, and I don't blame them. So it has a very unglamorous end, the story. No, I didn't do it anymore. Yeah.
But then I'm worried, Shivani, about your next book, because
I have been thinking about this actually, and I thought, I'm going to get one of those suspension straps on which I can hang upside down, because I'm going to need this. I'm going to, yeah. That is the delay at this moment. Yes.
All right. Otherwise, you've got the plot, I'm sure, all worked out. But this particular book, to come back to it, as you said, it's a very Delhi-centric book. It's also about huge inequalities. I mean, of course, the children grow up. We won't give the story away because we want the readers to enjoy reading it. And but it is, in that sense, inequality. something that you noticed even as a child, but then you drew it into a very interesting narrative. Uh, you come from a political family, and yet
Yes.
it is politics that actually allows empowerment in this book. Do you genuinely believe that?
See, I mean, I think that any, uh, well, career, I wouldn't say profession, which has a very public profile. I mean, if you take, for example, cinema or sport, or some sports certainly like cricket, and politics, if somebody breaks kind of the glass ceiling and they, achieve the zenith of heights and so on, then everybody goes on and how there's mobility in these professions, right? But for that, you don't see the scores of people who failed. So I think it's an illusion, personally, the kind of mobility which we see in, the 1% of people who do make it. I do unfortunately, feel that that is an illusion. So for every Rajesh who's made it, I don't know how many there are who haven't, right? But does that mean that people shouldn't try their best for everything? Absolutely not. But it's not as easy as somebody would make it out to be, I guess.
Well, certainly in the book, it is not easy because he has to go through his own sort of, crisis and his own kind of ways that he manages to ultimately get a political break. But as far as the upper class that is presented in your book goes, not a very pretty picture at all. Shivani, that is something which I was quite surprised by. There are no good things happening in their lives at all. I mean, it's quite a sad story, really.
So this is all, this is all relative, right? I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. I mean, they're living in secure houses. They have, good jobs. Their children are in good schools. They're traveling on holidays. So all of these things that they take for granted for another character like Rajesh would have been a dream. So it really depends on where you're looking for it. And I think, in every life, there's somebody, better looking than you, worse looking than you, richer, poorer, smarter, dumber. I don't know if that's a woke word anymore. But if you compare yourself with somebody, you'll always be unhappy, right? So which is what's happening here, that they're not looking at what they have, they're looking at what they don't have, which I don't know. I see a lot of that around me. I don't know how you feel about that. Do you?
Yeah, so you
I mean,
feel
this is
that
us.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, this is
I'm not,
us.
I'm not,
And,
I'm not removing myself from that. This is us. Yeah.
and the picture you paint of upper class society, it's very interesting to see that because we are always talking about India shining and aspirational India, etc. But in your book, if somebody were to read it, they would say, hey, it's not all that glamorous out there, I mean, even if you make all that money. Or do you think in your book it is actually a reflection of the old India? It is not the new India.
So, one of the ways I approached all my characters is, there is a tendency in the This Is Us category to otherize people of a different class, in that not imagining that they have the kind of emotional depth and dimensions or the range of desires and feelings that they do, right? Which I think is absolutely incorrect. So everybody wants something. Whatever you have, you want something else. And I think that's what's happening here, right? To all these characters, they're unhappy because they don't have something which they feel somebody else has. That's kind of the bottom line, right?
Yeah, I think I learned also a lot about how the new young people do behave. And one of the things which, from a young author, I mean, I really do look upon you as a new young author representing the new India. And what sort of took me aback a little bit was the amount of patriarchy that the book actually has. And it sort of depressed me a little bit to think that, hey, is it still so much all around us? Is there no change at all? And did you do that consciously?
Firstly, thank you for calling me young. Just to give you context, I'm old enough for having had a pen pal. Okay, that's how old I am. Okay, yeah. But having spoken to some actually young people who read my book, one of the things that resonated with them is how similar things are. And I was, saying this earlier today, is that I don't know a single girl or woman who has not encountered this uh, breed of or this brand of patriarchy. So do I feel it's this bad? Absolutely. Like somebody said to me, is your book satire? I was like, if every single event that took place in this book was real, I would not be surprised. So yes, I do think it's as bad. I don't think people have, and I think rather than smash patriarchy, we have to chip away at it very patiently for many, many, many years to come, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of holding up a mirror. I mean, your book does
Yes.
that very successfully. But the fact is that a lot, it's driven almost entirely by the male characters. That is what I think was the other point. I mean, when we talk about patriarchy, yes, but the women are not really rebellious. The one who tries to rebel, Nuria, I mean, she almost gets her just desserts as well. So is that what is happening now in India today still? What we
So
see around?
there are two parts to this answer. I have grown up in a very, very liberal and environment with very, very strong women around me. My father died when I was very young, and I don't have a brother, so I don't know how men think. For me, because I've grown up mostly with women, so it is a personal challenge for me to write about male characters. So the only reason I did that was to challenge myself, and that was one part of it. But yes, I do believe the majority of women today's lives are controlled by men. Now, am I writing about how things are, or am I writing about how things should be? Certainly there are those who will write about how things should be, but for me this is a mirror to society. The lack of autonomy that most women have today in India, it's ubiquitous, right? We can't run away from it. So yes, it is sadly true according to me.
Yeah, and also the dependency, which comes out quite clearly,
Yes.
that there is a deep desire for almost all the women in this book to have a man. I mean, like there seems to be something which is a reflection again. Is this very Delhi? I mean, is this very? Do you see this as being very Delhi? Because you don't see this. I think this kind of desire to be, hanging out with a guy or just having a man in your life, maybe in Bombay or in other cities, or do you think it's everywhere?
I think, without getting specifics, I think many themes in my book are universal. Yes, I do. I think
Yeah.
that even, this kind of validation, unfortunately, society does. I mean, you can do everything, but you're not married, you don't have a child, you don't have a child, you don't have a second child, you have two children, why don't you have a boy? All of us, face these, casual comments, which are supposedly casual, but that is putting a value on us, whether we like it or not. That is the next person. So I do think these themes are universal. I don't think it's specifically Delhi, not this one. Many things in the book are, but not this.
I thought it
Yeah.
was very Punjabi thing somehow, but maybe it goes beyond Punjab. It goes to almost, I mean, that's why we've got all these shows that constantly talk about marriage and things like that.
Yes.
But apart from that, on a more serious note, I think you did talk about the fact that it was challenging for you to maybe you to write about men, because this is something which I think is unique in your book, because there are some very strong male characters and you describe them in great detail. Uh, how did you do that? I mean, again, is that something that you decided not to base on any one person, but did you read up about strong male characters in other books, or did you just do it yourself in the two
So,
or three hours? Yeah.
this is an amalgamation of people I've seen and situations I've seen. And I felt that someone like, say, an Ahan or a Rajesh, they are products of their environment. So I didn't want to judge them in any way. And I was the most diffident about the thoughts of my male characters. And I actually went to friends who are, well, I wouldn't dare call them boys anymore, men, and said, do you think this is in line with the male voice? So I was so unsure of it that I actually had to show it to people and ask them if it worked. And, they said it worked, but it was difficult for me. It was all guesswork.
Fantastic. So there was not only an element of observation, but also an element of research that you had to put in. I mean, even dealing with the kind of characters you were writing about. Was there any
My
other
life is
kind?
this research.
Yeah, exactly. So, was there any other kind of research that you had to put in? I mean, any kind of incidents or things that were happening? Because in a sense, it is also a political novel. It talks about India today.
So, for me, this novel was written entirely by memory. So there's basically no research because, this is what I've seen through my years and through my life. And that is what gives it its non-linear structure, actually, because memories are by nature non-linear, right? So that kind of, I hope, comes out. So no, actually, there was not a lot of research which went in. But of course, small details, everybody, and I hope that that gave it the authenticity that I was looking for.
Oh, yeah, sure. And I think the other thing before we ask you to read a passage, because I think that would give a sense of people about your voice,
Yes.
how you actually wrote the book. You mentioned briefly that, the fact that you had to find the time, you had to carve out the time for a book like that. So, Shivani, because you are a mother, you're a wife,
Yes.
you probably live in a very busy household. Uh, and yet you managed to find the time. Now, how did you do that? Was it like early in the morning, late at night? How did you manage
So,
that?
I had reached pretty far into this book. I write very early in the morning when, the pandemic hit. Now, for most people, this was a great time to, do stuff and finish their books and whatnot. But for me, I have a young baby at home and I had my daughter who's doing online school and, I didn't find the kind of time at all. So then, that 6 a.m. writing became 4 a.m. writing, and I was not pleasant to be around those days, is all I can say. I mean,
I
I'm sure more
see.
than me, my busy household is very happy it's over. Yeah.
Where everybody had to be shushed and told that, go away, don't ask me, as you mentioned earlier, the burning question,
The
which
only person shushed is me. So I would lock myself in at a time when everybody's asleep.
yeah. So let's get a flavor of what you wrote. If you could read out a passage or two from your book,
Sure.
that'd be great.
So, I thought I would read a very short amount and I would go right at the beginning so a person would get a sense of where the story starts.
Okay.
This is the beginning of the book. The last of the bags packed, Parul and Ahan Sekand were ready to leave their family home for the final time. Acquired in 1946, Sekand House was intended to be the cradle for many grandsons and great grandsons in the coming years. Displaced as he was at partition, Rai Bahadur Manohar Krishna Sekand, Ahan's grandfather, a largely self-made man with a premonition about difficult times ahead, didn't suffer the life of a refugee, having swapped his house with that of an equally astute Muslim acquaintance before all the madness began. It was a gentleman's agreement. The Rai Bahadur arrived in Delhi by air, with gold coins sewn into the linings of his and his wife's coats. Their worthy possessions had followed by road, including the heavy teak furniture and cast iron cooking utensils that had been a part of his wife's dowry. As the family prospered in a new country, still finding its feet, they hosted the leading industrialists of the time and sheltered many a young, worse off cousin, excuse me, in Delhi to take an exam or for a job interview. Sikand House's lawns saw betaks and performances. A young Farida Khanum had sung at Ahan's parents' wedding, which Indira Gandhi herself had attended, at the height of both women's careers in the late 1960s. There would be no place for this largesse in Ahan's future. A builder was to swiftly and efficiently raze Sikand House to the ground and replace it with a block of carelessly constructed flats, where multiple families would take a piece of the Rai Bahadur's dream and plant their own in its place. The June sun was unforgiving, with temperatures so high that even the mosquitoes couldn't survive. In better days, Ahan and Parul would have been holidaying in London around this time, drinking artisanal gin and tonics every evening at the South Audley pub with their friends from school or parents of their children's friends, Delhiwalas with apartments in London. Ahan walked out for the last time, abstractedly rearranging his thinning hair. Terrazzo would give way to Botticino, and the driveway where he had learned to ride a bike was to be a stilt area in the new construction, where vacant-eyed servants would inhabit tiny, airless porter cabins on the border of legality, inhaling the diesel-filled air that the generator would regularly spew into their rooms. The builder got permission from the municipal corporation to cut down the old samel tree which his grandmother, his dadi, had planted when she had moved there, the one where hundreds of birds lived and sang at dawn and dusk. He vividly remembered playing with its cotton and pretending it was snow. Where it once stood would now be a parking spot, a precious and hotly contested piece of real estate in the new order of things. He would be returning here after it was rebuilt to live in a flat, a 3-bedroom hall kitchen unit, 1 bedroom for him and Parul, one for their children, and one for his mother, separated from his own with the thin 4.5-inch brick walls that the builders use now. I'll stop here. So just to give you a flavor of how Ahan is leaving his family home.
Very nice, and I couldn't be more thrilled, really, because you do mention the partition
Yes.
in it, and I have a special soft spot for partitions. So therefore, I think I could even identify a lot more with your characters. Shivani, the point is that this kind of writing, it does require, writing is a very, very lonely profession, as you must have found out,
Yes.
when you do sit hours by yourself. Did you, what were the kind of readings that you were doing, even before you began? Are you an ardent reader? Was it something that you had, as you said, you're an accidental writer thanks to yoga, but was it something that, you used to read other writers and feel inspired by them?
Yes, certainly. I mean, when I was a child, my mother and father used to take us to buy a book every single day. And that we used to read a book every day. Every
Every
day.
day?
I mean, obviously it wasn't War and Peace every day, but
Yeah.
we used to, so we had this habit of reading inculcated in us. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years specifically, I find it very difficult to read. I don't know if, Kishwar, you suffer from this. Since the pandemic started, when I am, you said, was it lonely? I'm very happy to be alone because I'm always surrounded by people, right? So the loneliness was, not a problem for me personally. Um, but I find that if you don't read, you can't write. So now, if I'm not reading a book, I'm always reading something, learning something new, which feeds back into my work. So even if I read an article on a completely unrelated subject, somewhere there'll be a tiny detail in it, which will come out in writing. What do you think of this?
It's wonderful. If you are going to be able to write the next book, which will get hopefully even better reviews than this one. So tell me, were you expecting this kind of an explosion of applause that you got after writing this? When was it published? It was published just very recently,
July.
isn't it?
July. So
And
a very, very intelligent person told me, have no expectations whatsoever. And obviously, it's very hard to do, right? But for me, I was just relieved that no one hated it. My expectations were so low that I was, they see for me, these characters have been living in my head, occupying my headspace for nearly 3 years now. So the familiarity has bred some contempt by this point, right? And I just don't, to see them on paper, to see other people accept them, it's a dream because you just don't know how a person will react to what you've written. You just don't know. I don't think you just,
but it's very, very few debut novelists who get this kind of a response. So definitely,
I'm
are
very
you
grateful.
now already, yes, thinking of the next book? I mean, that's what
I am.
we're all about. Okay.
I am. I'm ideating at the moment, which means I sit and I stare at a wall, and if anyone asks me what I'm doing, I say I'm ideating.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. And do you have any sense of what it's going to be about?
I do, but I still have to pickle it a little bit. But
Okay.
something to do with the cult of modern motherhood is what I'm thinking.
All right, very good. So I think so. Both of you, both of your books actually are going to be discussing and talking about the fact what India today is all about, and I think that
Yes,
that is
that
the other
yes.
thing which I found sort of reassuring in your book, because so much of what comes out in about India. Of course, your book is critical and it does have misogyny, patriarchy. We've already discussed that, but it also has what we would like to acknowledge as social mobility, despite
Yes.
all the issues and problems. It's not exactly, I wouldn't say it's a feel good book, but it definitely pushes you into the direction of thinking that things are possible in India. And those kind of narratives are quite rare, really, these days, because what one reads about is usually about, class and conflicts and, caste conflicts and things like that. In your book, there are solutions. So, do you think of yourself as a person who is more oriented towards that, towards looking at things at the glass half full rather than half empty?
I think social change is inevitable. As I said, a new set of people, a new set of ideas whose time comes, they will come and they will take over. And that is not something anybody can stop, right? And at another session, somebody asked me, sorry, I'm bringing up many other questions of other sessions today because they're all just kind of coming up. Um, do you think, somebody asked me this, what, the resolution of your book and the event, do you think of them that it was a good thing? To which I said, it was a good thing for Rajesh, for the protagonist whose life progressed. So if I'm looking at it entirely from the lens of my own privilege, I can, probably bang on about how it's a bad thing. But I think that a lot of people are improving their lives. So, today, I cannot switch on the TV in a family atmosphere because you cannot watch any of the TV shows because this, violence, negativity. And I wanted something which was less brutal. I don't know how to put it. Maybe it's my personality that came out there. And, whoever doesn't agree with it is welcome not, to write another book on another whatever. But this is my kind of thought process.
Right. And to come back to on a personal note, how did your family react? I mean, you are in a very public space, but did you get a lot of support while you were writing this book, apart from the well-known writers that you've already mentioned, but the rest of your family, your husband, your children, in-laws, the rest?
I didn't tell anyone I was writing. Of course, my husband, my in-laws, and
Wow.
so on, and my mother, because I didn't know that I would finish. I just didn't know I would finish because it's the first novel for me. I didn't know where it's going, and there's nothing that kills creativity than like the question.
Sorry, I can't
You
hear
got
you.
you. I don't know where you lost me.
I can't hear you now. Vineet?
Shivaniji's audio is perfectly fine. We can hear her nice and clear.
You can hear her? Okay.
Yes, yes, we
Because
can
now
hear
Yeah.
her perfectly
I
fine.
can't.
Can you
Okay,
hear me?
now I can hear her. Yes.
Yeah.
Now
Okay.
I can hear.
Great.
Yes, yes, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, what was I saying? I've forgotten. Yeah, about family and so on. If you write, there's nothing that kills creativity like the question, how's your book going? I think it fills most people with a sense of dread because there's just no answer for that, I think. Well, okay, today I had writer's block. So, one of the things about the next novel is when, I'll have to acknowledge that I'm doing it. The first one, I just kind of, woke up at 4 a.m. Nobody knew what I was doing. And I actually kind of, when I had, tied up with HarperCollins India, did I really kind of tell anyone I was doing it? And that, in retrospect, was the right way. Better to
Right.
surprise with a finished product than kind of go on about it before, right?
Yeah. And who was your first reader? I mean, who did you actually show the book to? The first reader whose opinion you wanted to take?
My sister, Meru Gokhale.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Um,
That makes
she is yeah, she and she knows me very, very well, and she won't mince words. And as she said, if it hadn't been good, it would have been kind to protect you and tell you it's bad. So
wow.
she said, I wouldn't have let you do that to yourself if it hadn't been
Yeah.
good. So that, I mean, it would have, if she'd euthanized it right at the beginning, then that gave me some confidence, because she would have not have let me put myself out there if she hadn't been happy with it.
No, sounds wonderful. I mean, to get acknowledgement from someone who's already a publisher, that is a good way to begin. And
yes, that was she.
Yeah, that's a happy note, really. To move on to what I would like to also see whether there are any other questions from the audience that are coming in. But apart from that, Shivani, there is obviously something that is driving you on. There is a reason that you're writing these books. And is it that it was a long suppressed desire? As you said, it was an accidental thing. But the next one that you are going to tackle, which is about motherhood. Now, this is something obviously also very close to your heart. There are children in the book also, which you've just written. So this is something that also I think needs acknowledgement. Many women, working women today, I think for them motherhood is just, it does not have the joys that it should have. And I'm not going to ask you to reveal your story, but is this something that you feel strongly about?
I think I want to save this kind of entire opinion, which is going to become an entire book. But I feel that the kind of stress that's been put on motherhood now, on doing things right, and I think that is the bottom line, that human beings wouldn't have reproduced to their own peril the way they had if it was that difficult, right? But now there is a perfect way to be a mother, and to me that is a cause and effect which is not very clear to me, because the child is a independent human being with their own desires and wishes and so on. So that is the kind of theme I'm going to explore.
Fantastic. It sounds really good. And out of the many glowing reviews that you've got, what about the connection, as you mentioned, with your readers? Have you got any connect with them, and have they given you feedback which you have enjoyed listening to, or not enjoyed, whatever? Could you tell us something about that?
Yes. I mean, I have to say that through Instagram, which seems to have a very active book community, readers community, I get messages on a daily basis on how people feel, what they felt about the characters, very specific questions. And as for reviews, I was specifically very impressed by a review in the Scroll magazine, because it was written by a college student. And wow. I mean, I'm really happy to see that genuinely young people are engaging with writing in this way. That's one part of it. And the second part is that there is an environment that fosters this kind of thought. So yes.
Mm-hmm. So there was a review that you really enjoyed, and I think that's the power of this book, because you've got enough there that appeals to an older person like me, and also enough that
a middle-aged person like me.
Darling, we will not discuss your age, because you look young enough to be in college yourself. And
that's very kind. That's very kind of you.
And so, are you finding it a bit of a challenge to have published during just about the end of the pandemic, the last days of the pandemic, whatever we might call it? Because in the old days, when we authors used to go around, we would go shake hands with real life readers and things like that, which you have not had the chance to do. Yeah. Are you missing that? Because you must have seen that often enough with the other authors in your family.
I have. So I am obviously missing it, but I don't know any better, which I think is a good thing. Had I already done a book where, I had a different experience, this is the only experience I have. So I guess I just don't know what I'm saying.
It's wonderful, I think. So shall we ask Vineet if there are any questions? And are there any questions that you think I should have asked and I haven't done so? So
no, I think you've done. I think you've covered it all.
Yeah, but let's ask Vineet. Are there any questions out there which you think we should answer? Which we should get Shivani to answer? Okay, we can't seem to get hold of Vineet.
I think we've lost Vineet. Yeah.
We may have lost But I do have another question actually, which is to do with how quickly your book became a bestseller. This is which is what I think you mentioned in the beginning, is that it is now a bestseller, and that is really tough. I mean, as a writer, I can tell you that all of us have attempted to dream of writing. I won't even say I've written, but have attempted to dream of writing a bestseller, and you have actually done it, and that is quite remarkable, really. Something which must be making you feel like pinching yourself every now and then, saying, "Is this a dream? Is this real?"
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, just my biggest. I mean, I feel so happy when people message me and they say they like this part and they like that part. So, the bestseller part for me is quite remote, because you just, it doesn't mean anything in real terms. As in, I love hearing about it, but even better is when people contact me and engage with me about the book. I just love that.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm very grateful it's a bestseller. Thank you. That's fabulous. Yeah, but it's not to take away from that at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the next stage for all bestsellers is to make it into a film, and it is quite film. It can be. It's quite filmic. It's quite the narrative itself. The rich boy, the poor boy, and then the resolution that they come to at the end. It is something which could easily be turned into a cinematic.
I would be thrilled.
Narrative.
I would be absolutely over the moon if that happened.
Yeah. I think that would probably be the next stage. But then, Shivani, hopefully you'll do well, and all sorts of wonderful things are going to happen, I'm sure, with this book. I'm sorry about all the technical, challenges.
It's not your fault. This is modern life.
Yeah.
This is modern life.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we've come to now, where we have to wait to. I wish this could have been a real life interaction. Then we could have just sat across a coffee table
soon.
and discussed this. But I'm so happy that I got a chance to read your book and to see that there is a wonderful novelist who's written the first one, and no doubt is going to come up with a second one, which is even going to be better.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll do a London launch as well, a real life London launch.
Where, I can see real people. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I look forward to that.
That would be so good. No, but anyway, all good luck. Please wave your book around and tell the readers where we can get hold of it.
Okay, you can get hold of it wherever books are sold.
Okay, wonderful. And it's looking so good. I love that. That is Sikand House, is it, on the cover?
Yes,
it is. It is. Okay.
It is, yeah.
Very nice. Very Delhi, very nice. And, almost makes me nostalgic for the old days. And of course, wonderful to be living in the India that you've written about. Thank you so much, Shivani.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nehru Center, for giving us this chance, for having this interaction. And thank you, Amish, wherever he is. And he's just disappeared. And thank you, Vineet. So I think we can log off now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vineet. Thank you.